I'm Dr. Iain Britton, an academic who studies volunteers in policing internationally, and I'm delighted to continue our series of interviews on Policing TV with experts and leaders around the world of volunteer policing by being joined today by Dr. Martin Wright. Dr. Wright is leading strategically on virtual volunteering, a groundbreaking new model of online engagement and participation which enables police agencies to directly engage with the public. So a very big welcome to Policing TV, Martin. Can you give an example, Martin, of some of the areas of work which virtual volunteering has been engaged in so far during the pilot phase in Wales?
Certainly, gladly. I mentioned earlier on that the live programme we're running currently is supported by Tarion, which is the Regional Organised Crime Unit for South Wales. And as you could probably well imagine, they look at and are concerned about the more serious crimes that affect the general public. One of those crimes that is actually being posted to the students and the students are encouraged to engage with is around romance fraud. And I know many of your viewers will be familiar with this crime type where often individuals who are vulnerable are being targeted online by criminals who are seeking to create a false relationship with them to gain financially from it. The students at the University of South Wales have looked at these problems, and I'll give you a couple of examples that have now been fed back to Tarion. One was a student who had some familiarity with dating sites, which are oftentimes locations through which romance fraud is initiated, was able to undertake a critical review of those dating sites and identified that there was an absence or no clear indication by which individuals could report suspicious or fraudulent activity that's taking place within that site to the site owners. So that information was fed back to Tarion for Tarion to then take that up with those companies themselves. In another case, a group of students did a critical review of Tarion's social media presence and identified that they were unable or not able to actually engage with social media influencers whose followers tended to come from the community of individuals that was particularly vulnerable to becoming victims of romance fraud. And it was a fascinating piece of work that they did. We then asked the students to do some further work and actually begin to identify a handful of these social media influencers, which they did. We again fed that information back to Tavian, as all student solutions are screened within the university at first instance. And we were able to identify to Tavian a handful of such social media influencers for Tavian to then influence the influencers to perhaps safeguard individuals from becoming victims of this crime type.
And this crime type it is such an insidious crime in terms of the impact it can have on victims, and is something which I think people possibly don't appreciate the scale of at times as well. Was a student population a good population to engage with this? Was there an insight that this population brought to that issue?
I think certainly yes. I mean, clearly, young people are very familiar with social media sites, and the nature of, for example, dating sites and the engagement with them. So they brought an insight to this crime and the nature of this crime that perhaps wouldn't necessarily be shared by some police officers. So it was a really interesting insight that they gave it. And some of them, having personal experience of these, were able to again reflect critically upon the solutions to these particular crimes for the future.
So was the experience of this for virtual volunteering provided insight around this crime type that in reality Tarion, as a specialist police operation looking at this, wouldn't have been able to engage with otherwise?
I think we need to recognise that police resources are limited. They don't have, for example, unlimited resources to look at all of this. So by bringing in thousands of individuals to reflect upon the nature of the crimes is just a really big bonus for the police. So I would suggest there's a great willingness among the police to do more, but oftentimes there are restrictions upon what they can do. They have to focus clearly upon the here and now. So having that research, that undertaking amongst these students, I think is just added bonus really in terms of it all.
And and when you look more broadly across volunteering in policing, it's often focused on neighbourhood and community teams. And here, what you're doing with virtual volunteering is engaging specialist resources in policing, which are at that sort of regional, serious crime type level of focus. How has that relationship worked? Has the policing side of this been engaged and felt there's a benefit from the work that's been being done around romance fraud?
I've been struck by the level of support that, for example, and I'll name the gentleman, DCI Stephen Maloney at Tarion has given to this project, and clearly he is seeing the benefits of it as well. But no, I think the support that we've seen extends beyond, for example, just Tarion. The Chief Constable of Diffid Powys Police, Dr. Richard Lewis, is now engaging with a crime problem that's specific to a large rural force, namely the cultivation of cannabis in abandoned properties. And we will see, I think, other problems coming forward with different police forces. At this point in time, the work we're doing around violence against women and girls is specifically focused around tech-enabled abuse, but also spiking as well. And you and I can well imagine, Ian, how a crime type related to spiking would be of very real interest to students.
Thank you very much for spending time with us today on Policing TV.
Thank you, Ian.